Welcome to your reading. The first thing I want to say before I get started is that in the birth chart, I can see what the healing and growth journey is, but I can't tell where a person is on that journey. I know that you've been doing a lot of work on your own, so some of the things that I talk about may be things that you've already worked through. When that's the case, you can just look at those things as validation or however you want to take it. And then hopefully there's some pieces here that can be helpful to help finish out, any of those cycles or any of those patterns that you have left. The first thing that I noticed when looking at your chart is that you have Chiron in Aries. To me, the way that I read, Chiron represents triggers or sensitivities that we developed as children around the way that others respond to us or react to us. And this is based on, how adults in our life, our primary caregivers, our parents, our teachers, responded to, just how we naturally were, naturally did things. So with Chiron in Aries, you likely have triggers around how others respond when you try to assert yourself. So you could be sensitive around being assertive or sensitive around assertive people. And without a healthy level of assertiveness, we give our power over to others through things like conflict avoidance. With Chiron in the 11th house, finding the correct tribe for you is going to be important. People with similar values and interests in you, people who will be assets for you in achieving your goals. And with Chiron in this house, you could have past experiences where, you were burned by the tribe, you were outcasted, those types of things. Another way of looking at Chiron and Aries is to look at the psychological need of Aries energy and then the strategy that energy, most naturally utilizes to meet that need. So for Aries, its need is for challenge or survival, and the strategy it naturally utilizes to meet that need is the intentional or unintentional, conscious or unconscious selection of a crisis. Aries is learning courage, and it learns through scary or challenging experiences. Aries needs an adversary, so something or someone to fight to prove to itself that it has what it takes to survive and triumph. So the unconscious expression of this Aries energy would be an externalized expression in things like having enemies, engaging in pointless fights, irritability, argumentativeness, and things like that. And then the conscious expression of this Aries energy would be that your opponent and your adversary becomes yourself, in that you start doing the hard things, you're not sweeping things under the rug, you're facing your fears head on. So now instead of fighting with everybody else in the world, you're fighting with yourself to prove to yourself that you have what it takes to survive and triumph. In your birth chart, your Chiron is square your nodes. So what this tells me is that there's an issue around this sensitivity that's representative of Chiron, this wounding that is causing a disruption and a delay in your personal growth. You're coming from that past life, childhood orientation of Cancer, and in this lifetime, you're supposed to be learning how to integrate the opposing energy of Capricorn, which is your north node. So the fact that Chiron is square the nodes means that it's blocking that natural growth and that natural development from Cancer or your past self to Capricorn or your future self. And wherever there's a square, one aspect of the nodes needs to be reworked or approached in a different way. So for you, your Chiron is pointing towards your North Node in Capricorn. So those energies need to be reworked or approached in a different way. So what that could look like is, from a shadow state, is trying to control your own assertiveness or the assertiveness of others, trying to have some control over that. Because control is the shadow side of that Capricorn energy. So by learning productive, healthy control through assertiveness, that would look like focusing on the things that you can control. So the things that you have control over, your own thoughts, your own words, your own deeds. Focusing on that instead of everything you can't control, which is basically everything else. Other people, their feelings, their thoughts, their opinions, and even, the world at large. We can't control the world. The only thing we can control is ourselves. So if you approach Capricorn from that angle, it can help you to undo this trauma, this sensitivity around assertiveness. Because when you do that, if you think back to what I just talked about, the conscious expression of Aries is engaging in battle with oneself. Now you're placing the focus of control on yourself and, okay, what can I do? What battles can I engage in? How can I be assertive with myself in ways that are going to benefit me? Now the focus is something positive. How are my struggles and how is my assertiveness going to improve my life and benefit me? Instead of my focus being placed on everything I can't control, which is maybe other people's assertiveness or even your own sensitivity to assertiveness itself. That's not something that you can control. It's going to come up. It's a trigger, right? Because of the trauma that you experience. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and read the psychological need of the Capricorn energy and the strategy for meeting that need, just as I did with Aries. So the need of Capricorn is for mastery or integrity in your public role or career. So mastery means that, you've spent time, you've mastered something that you have an interest and a passion for. And then the integrity piece is that you know what you're passionate about as far as work goes. And, what you're passionate about and what you're doing are the same things. That's where the integrity piece comes in. There's integrity between what you're passionate about and what you're doing. And then the strategy, the natural strategy of Capricorn for meeting that need is to isolate or have solitude for the purpose of learning self-approval and only acting from your own notion of success. Capricorn grows and evolves through self-mastery, through approval of self that is independent of others' approval. And this self-respect is built in solitude and through self-discipline, by doing things alone that you truly enjoy. And in doing that, you learn that there is no standard version of success. In taking the time to get to know your values and goals, you are able to marry your true interests with your career or public role. And in doing that, you're able to integrate your true self into society successfully. So the unconscious expression of Capricorn is control of one's emotions, trying to control the world, other people, or things, We're trying to control and repress the world or life itself, as well as loneliness. And then the conscious expression of Capricorn is controlling one's actions, self-discipline, isolation for the purposes of self-mastery, patience and self-discipline, practicality, and an iron will. A lot of times people with Capricorn energy, the unconscious expression, one of them is loneliness. So people with this energy, they have, this time to themselves, which they could be using to, figure out what they love to do and then start doing that. So that's a really good use of time, a productive use of time, because it's, your time and what you're going to do with it and what you love are things that you have control over. So, I want to do a quick recap on this Chiron and Aries piece, and that, as it exists as a skip step to your nodes. The remedy for this Chiron wounding and sensitivity is to take that sensitivity around assertiveness, whether it's your own assertiveness or another person's, and begin to transform that energy from something negative to something positive. So now, instead of assertiveness being associated with fear, which makes sense because of the trauma that you experienced as a child, it would make sense that you'd have this sensitivity to assertiveness or aggressiveness due to the aggressive nature of the childhood abuse that you experienced. So being able to reframe that from a negative, which it was when you experienced it, was horrible and horrific, but as an adult, being able to take that trauma and flip it around into something that's positive, instead of seeing assertiveness as something that's bad and scary and something to be feared, it's going to produce that need for control, right? That's indicative of the shadow aspect of the North Node, Capricorn energies. I was the victim of somebody else's aggressiveness, and therefore I need to have control, control over my life, control over my body, control over whatever, just control over life in general. So we can, that control is a real need, but we can approach that from a space of fear and lack, or we can approach it from the space of love and abundance. So we can take that control, and instead of utilizing it the way we've been in the past, which is from that space of fear, like I have to protect myself from people in the world at large, which, serves us at some point in our lives as we're experiencing the trauma. That's wise to do that. But later, when we're safe, we want to take that control and utilize it in a way that's serving us instead of not serving us. And that would be the ways that I talked about. So using the isolation that was caused because of the trauma and trying to control other people and trying to keep the world and other people out. Now you can take that isolation that resulted from that and use it to your advantage and really be assertive, find your natural assertiveness and begin doing the hard things. Spend that time in service to yourself. Find out what you love to do and start doing it. And in that way, your assertiveness and your control is used wisely and productively. And that would be the remedy for this specific piece of trauma in your chart, your Chiron skip step. And then your other two trauma signatures were with Mars and Uranus. So Mars and Uranus are square the nodes, just as Chiron is. And what this tells me is that your ability to act and to be assertive, which is the Mars piece, as well as the coming into of your own, or the finding, reclaiming, and honoring of your authentic self, which is the Uranus piece, or the parts of you that were affected by the childhood abuse. And these traumas go back to past lifetimes, so I don't know, traumas that block growth, that have a past life orientation, it could have a different cause than the trauma you experienced in childhood, or it could have been the same. I'm not sure, but and this Mars and Uranus, these are different parts of your psyche or being. Mars is our will, our ability to act and to survive. And then Uranus is the individuated self. So if you look at the natural zodiac from Mars through Pisces, from Aries through Pisces, it talks about developmental stages. Like Aries is the baby. The baby is helpless. It has to depend on its parents for survival. It's highly, a baby doesn't think, it just does, like Aries does. Aries doesn't. It acts without forethought, right? It's that fire. It's that instinctual yang fire. And then you move on from that to Taurus. So now we're talking about the toddler stage. And Taurus is all about, wanting things to stay the same, whereas the toddler is about, object constancy. That's what they're learning about at that stage of development. And then it just goes on up through the stages with, Leo being the stage, the developmental lifehood stage of the teenager, where, we're figuring out who we really are in opposition to our parents and as opposed to our peers. And then, ideally, when there isn't trauma and growth and development isn't blocked by that trauma, we get to the Uranus stage in life, which is where we, it's that Uranus opposition, it's that midlife crisis where we're like, okay, this is who I really am. I'm ready to acknowledge it, and I'm ready to show it to the world, and I'm not afraid to do that. I have 0 F's left to give. I'm just going to be me, right? And I know you've already been through your Uranus opposition, so you probably know what I'm talking about. But so when I talk about these two planets that were affected by trauma, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Mars, your will, and then Uranus, your individuated true self. These were the aspects of you affected by the trauma. And because these two parts of you are conjunct in your birth chart, I think they might be the same degree. Let me see. I have your chart right here. Okay, they're 4 degrees apart. Because they're basically touching each other, I'm reading it as a trauma bond. These two parts of your being are trauma bonded. And what that looks like is that when one part of you, let's just say your will or your assertiveness, from that Chiron wounding, is triggered or activated, then your true or individuated self is also going to be activated. And the same is true the other way around. So if somebody, if you have a trigger come up around that true self and expressing that true self, automatically that that part of your being, your will, your assertiveness is going to be triggered as well. So that's just something to know and to pay attention to when you do get triggered, so that you can see that that's happening. Okay, and then both of these planets, or these parts of yourself, are in the energy of Libra. So in this lifetime, these parts of you are asking to be healed and developed through a gaining of the ability to recognize the early signs of emotional imbalance or upset. So in order to begin healing these specific parts of yourself, that's the work that's going to be needed, is, having that ability to be aware enough and in your body enough to recognize when you are triggered. And, when we're triggered, most of us react, right? That's what we do. But eventually we get to a space where we've been triggered enough that we have enough, awareness, enough presence and awareness around our triggers that we can begin to come to a space where we're not so reactionary around them, and we can be, use our witness consciousness when they do come up to observe them and get curious about them, instead of just, reacting out of that pain unconsciously. So having said that, I'll go ahead and read the need for Libran energy and the strategy. So the need of Libra is for internal harmony, calm, and tranquility, or balance, to be unbothered by anything that life may throw at you. That's the need of Libra. And then the strategy, the natural strategy for meeting that need, is early detection or recognition of the signs of emotional imbalance. Because in order to maintain inner balance or equilibrium, takes that, that ability to start to recognize that stuff early on before we just, blow up in a reactionary state. Libra is attracted to anything that calms or soothes the nervous system, things like beautiful works of art, a tidy home, or a beautiful landscape. And then connection with others via relationships can bring harmony if engaged with healthily. When we're talking about trauma, I like to talk about things that, are going to bring us back into our body, that calm the nervous system. So, anything that can do that for you, it might be like massage or dance or breath work, or anything that just brings you back into your body, that allows your nervous system to calm down, is going to be really helpful. And then the unconscious expression of Libra energy is obsession with physical beauty, being too nice, conflict avoidant, having weak opinions or boundaries, or trying to maintain peace at any price. The conscious expression of Libra energy is internal peace and balance, interdependent relationships. So, having relationships that are healthy versus codependent or hyper-independent ones. And then the ability to understand and accept paradox. So the ability to engage in balanced thinking instead of black and white thinking. So one conscious manifestation of Libra is to realize that two opposing things can simultaneously exist or be true. And with an open head and ajna, I know that, I'm assuming that that's wisdom that you've gained from having those two centers open already. So, and the reason I like to include the unconscious and unconscious expression of these energies is it gives clients a way to kind of track where they're at with each energy and see, well, is there still work that needs to be done or not? Because if you're identifying mainly with the unconscious expression, that's a clue that there's still work that needs to be done with that specific energy. So just a quick recap on this piece. Getting into your body and maybe even engaging in things like feelings and needs work could be a good remedy for this, because in order to fulfill that need of Libra for internal balance and calm and harmony, there has to be that capacity developed to be in the body enough that you can, have access to those early signs of imbalance, emotional imbalance. And this strategy for healing and working with Mars and Uranus, and how these wounded parts of yourself have blocked, your own growth and development as it's intended to be played out, is tied into your South Node in Cancer. So we need to go back to the South Node to work with these specific energies. With Chiron, we needed to rework and reapproach the North Node energies of Capricorn. But with Mars and Uranus, we need to go back and rework or reapproach the South Node energies of Cancer. And that's going to look like a need to learn emotional responsibility. So, the recognition of one's emotions, and then the taking of responsibility for those emotions instead of projecting them onto other people. Doing that, as well as establishing status and meaning outside of your family. So doing things on a daily basis, like checking in with your feelings and needs, will help you to develop your will, and will over time allow you to finally, I don't want to say mature, because that's not a good word, but, developmentally progress to that stage that we're all supposed to get to, that's blocked by trauma, where we figure out who we really are, and, we find joy in expressing that. So checking in with your feelings and needs on a daily basis will help you develop your will and authentic self. And doing that will also allow you how to learn to relax and find things to do that you also, really enjoy, which ties into your Capricorn. So this is where now we're getting into, okay, now I'm learning how to rework and approach the South Node energies in a healthy way, which is then going to transfer into, that is going to flow into the North Node energies of Capricorn. You have Mars and Uranus in the 5th house. And the 5th house is about fun, play, and romance. So, as you do the work, the re-embodiment work, and you get in touch with your feelings, those feelings are going to start to inform you of, what you want to move towards instead of away from. With trauma, we're like hyper-focused, and all we focus on is what we want to move away from, which is good. It helps us survive. But once we're in a safe place, we have to learn how to rewire our brains through new behaviors to not only focus on what we want to move away from, but what we want to move towards. And our feelings are, powerful tools to inform us of that. When we feel excited or happy or joyful, those are the things we want to move towards. And because, your trauma happened at such a young age, I'm sure that it impacted your ability to even be a child in some regards. So it makes total sense to me that this would be a need for you, a need to undo that trauma is to find that fun and to find that play, which is representative of the 5th house, and do those things. Because, we can't, if if we're missing, if we have gaps in our development and we're missing stages of life, we can't just go from being, a baby to an adult. We have, even as adults, if there's parts of us that we never got to develop, we have to go back and develop those parts, unfortunately. And a lot of times it can be a really fun thing to do. And I'll go ahead now and read the keynotes for the 5th house, since your 2 affected planets are there, the Mars and Uranus. So the 5th house rules pleasure, fun, and creative self-expression, as well as romance or falling in love. And signs and planets shaping the 5th house give a prescription for the maintenance of joy. And these are things that can be pleasures of the body, mind, and or spirit. So successful navigation of the 5th house looks like joyous anticipation of each day, the development of a creative outlet through which tangible evidence of your internal processes can be expressed, and the capacity to establish initial rapport with interesting strangers. So before I go on to the unsuccessful navigation, I want to talk about the second part of the successful navigation. The development of a creative outlet to express your internal processes. That's the life stage of Leo, of the teenager. That Leo energy, when it creates, when it expresses, as a teenager, we'll just use an example, because that's the life stage that it rules. They don't do it for, the expression and the creation is pure. It's not tainted by, what recognition am I going to get with this? That would be the shadow expression, but it's just that pure joy that they get from doing what they love. And that would be part of a successful navigation of this house. And then the unsuccessful navigation would be things like abusive, self-destructive, or uncontrollable relationships with particular pleasures, having creative blockages, or the inability to relax and play. Learning how to navigate this house successfully will look like you integrating your North Node energies in a healing way, because this fun and this play is related to that Capricorn need to have, integrity and mastery in doing something that you love. And this is what the what you love piece is the 5th house. So by learning how to use your time alone in conscious, healthy ways, it becomes productive and healing. And then instead of trying to control your emotions and thereby feeling lonely, when we try to control our emotions, we feel lonely because we don't have a true relationship to ourselves. And when that happens, then we're looking for another person to fill that sense of loneliness. Through checking in with how you're feeling and what you're needing, you'll begin to feel less lonely because someone is finally giving you the attention that you deserve. And hint, it's you. And again, I don't know where you are on this journey. Maybe you're already doing this. Maybe this is something that you've already learned, but I have to bring it up because it is part of your journey. And then, when you do check in with yourself and you're like, okay, I need this, I want this, and then you act assertively to get those things, then, that can inform you of proper career choices. And I believe you're into human design, so what this would translate to in human design is following your inner authority, that sacral gut response. What do I have energy for? And then spending your time and energy on what you find exciting, fulfilling, joy producing, those types of things. I noticed in your body graph that you have an open, I believe it's fully open will or heart center. And your personality Chiron and your design Chiron gates are both within that center. So what that tells me is that, learning how to use your will correctly to engage in work that you find satisfying can transform failure into your life, into success. And now I'm going to travel into the second house in your south node, because this is what we're talking about here. One manifestation of the unsuccessful navigation of the second house, which is your south node house, is a collapse of willpower leading to failure in the world. And when I looked at this unconscious expression in combination with the gates and the gene keys and the shadows of those gene keys that were in those gates within the will center, it made sense to me that this might be or have been one of the unconscious expressions of this house that you've struggled with in the past. So I'll go ahead and read about the second house so that you can determine where you're at with this. The second house deals with our self-esteem, money, and possessions. It's about proving to ourselves that we can do what we want and what we need, and we can have a successful life. It's also about the intentional change of a personal fault or flaw, as well as issues of self-respect and evaluating our own worth. With the heart center is all about self-worth, right? Trying to prove ourselves through what we do and what we can provide for others. But, with it completely open, that's not what you're here to do. That's not correct for you. And unless you have access to that energy, unless you have access to willpower energy from another person's aura, or through a transit to that center that defines it. But even if you have access to that energy, you still have to follow your strategy and authority and check in with that sacral. And, if that sacral says, then you're not supposed to be using that willpower energy in that way. It has to be used on something where your sacral says, it has that yes response. So successful navigation of this house looks like confidence and self-esteem based on concrete self-adjustment or self-development and the effective worry-free management of resources. Unsuccessful navigation of the second house looks like materialism and the equation of self-worth with the value of one's possessions, lack of self-respect, fear of risk, and then the one I mentioned earlier, the collapse of willpower leading to failure in the world, as well as life-limiting concern with material security. So being so fearful about how you're going to survive on the material plane, because that's what the will center rules is the material plane. That, we're doing all these things and we're using our willpower in ways that aren't really going to get us where we want to be or that aren't correct for us. And, that concern is limiting our life and what it could be otherwise. When I was looking at your chart and thinking about, taking notes on what I saw and what I wanted to communicate, I was thinking about that near fatal car accident that you mentioned and how it happened close to or during your Saturn return. I didn't check, but even if it didn't happen during your Saturn return, it was definitely preparing you for that because of how old you were when it happened. But, I was thinking that, what was the purpose of that accident And I believe that the purpose was that it served as a learning experience, in that it was meant to teach you how to come out of your mind. You know, you have the undefined head and ajna, and with trauma, especially the kind that you had that was so physical, you know, but with all trauma, we come out of the body and we go up into the mind. So that car accident, I'm sure, excuse me, I don't know if that's the effect that it had on you, but I believe that that's what it was meant to do, was to teach you how to come out of the mind and back into the body. You know, back into your feeling and your sensations. And the reason that I'm bringing this up here is because I'm trying to get to your North Node, 8th house, and I believe that this had something to do with it. You know, this event could have possibly changed the way that you viewed reality and what was important to you. And it was also, you know, possibly the catalyst that brought you back into your body and to be able to begin noticing what you're perceiving, you know, what you're sensing, feeling, hearing, smelling, instead of focusing so much on your intellect or what you know. And part of the reason that I'm saying this is because you have Mars and Uranus, you know, those two traumatized, afflicted parts of your being, or, you know, the parts of your being that were affected by the trauma, that are causing the blockages in your personal growth and healing and development. Those are both trine your Saturn. You know, Saturn is the hard lessons, the things that we have to learn in life, is trining that Saturn in Gemini in the 12th house. And you know, anybody that knows astrology knows that trines are beneficial. You know, they're here because there's something good for us. And even though Saturn is those hard lessons, a lot of times those hard lessons are things that are really good for us in terms of helping us to heal and resolve the traumas that we've been carrying around for multiple lifetimes. And the piece that I just said about, you know, that car accident changing the way that you perceive reality, the reason that I thought that is because your Saturn is in Gemini, and the need of Gemini is to perceive, manifest reality as it actually exists. And the strategy that Gemini uses is learning through openness, receptivity, and communication. So Gemini grows and evolves by remaining open and receptive to life's varied experiences and people's different ideas, which, you know, with that open head and ajna, again, that's going to be a source of wisdom for you. You know, knowledge that can't be gained from your own limited life experience. So, you know, Gemini wants to know all the things, right? It wants to know everything. But there's only so much that we can know through our direct life experiences in a single lifetime. So it acquires additional knowledge that it can't gain on its own through talking with and listening to others. And Gemini's perception is sensory. So the ways in which we interact or communicate with the world, the things that we see, feel, hear, touch, and smell, you know, that undigested data of what is perceived and not its meaning is the purpose behind Gemini's communication, curiosity, and openness. So that would be the conscious expression of Gemini. But you don't see that very often. So the unconscious expression of Gemini is things like intellectual debates, fact hoarding, being a know-it-all or trying to figure things out, busyness, overextension, excessive talking, or emotional or nervous system exhaustion, which results from the things that just came before it, you know, just trying to know everything. It's going to burn out your nervous system real quick. And then the conscious expression of Gemini energy is unbiased, open perception of the world via your senses. So it's about wonder, it's about learning, it's about, being a perpetual student instead of a teacher. That's more of a Sagittarius thing. And then curiosity and intelligence. And then you have Saturn in the 12th house. So the 12th house rules consciousness itself and events and experiences that disrupt our identification with personality, events that cause ego death. So I don't know what the full story was around that car accident, but, I could imagine something like even having an out-of-body experience or some, temporary disruption with your ego and how you perceive reality could have occurred based on Saturn being in the 12th. And then successful navigation of the 12th house looks like self-transcendence, freedom from worry about the ups and downs of life, spiritual and psychic experiences, meditation, sense of the presence of God or whatever you call a higher power or higher levels of consciousness. And then the unconscious navigation of this house would look like blurry, confused, or uncertain images, escapism, abusive or self-destructive relationships with alcohol, food, sleep, sex, television, or other drugs, so addiction, hypersensitivity, mental imbalance, schizophrenia, or chronic bad luck. I don't know if this is something you've noticed, but for me, I've noticed that, those bad things that happen to us, that find us, those sources of trauma and pain, while we're going through them, we want to get away from them. We're like, why is this happening to me? This is so unfair, which it is unfair. But, for me anyways, on the other side, once I'm out of the ordeal, there's always a blessing on the other side of that. And I feel like it's a possibility for you that car accident, that near fatal car accident, even though it was really traumatizing, may have been the catalyst of what forced you into your North Node 8th house. Because the 8th house is what governs life experiences that lie outside of our ability, of our conscious mind to comprehend experiences like death, sex, and the paranormal. Anything any experiences that force us into those type of, primal, raw, destructive, but also creative life forces are things that are ruled by the 8th house. And then, because you have the North Node in the 8th house, this is the type of experiences that are correct for you. This is how you're, it's how you're growing and evolving. You're going from that South Node in the 2nd house, which is about, more of the material plane, and then going into the 8th house, which is more of the immaterial plane. And, Taurus likes things to remain the same. It's fixed earth. It's the material plane, earth, fixed. It wants things to stay the same. And the 8th house, which is ruled by Scorpio, is water. It still has that, that Taurus polarity where, it wants things to stay the same, but they can't. That's not the way that life works. And we got to go out of earth and go into the water. We have to go from the material to the spiritual planes, and we have to go into experiences that we don't want to experience. So, when we have those life experiences, it helps it helps us to be able to accept the reality of whatever feelings arise beyond our personality because of those experiences. This house deals with the most transformative and baffling, beautiful and horrific experiences that life has to offer. So successful navigation of the 8th house looks like a healthy, flowing, spontaneous sexuality. Also acceptance of death and the integration of its reality into daily life, which I can see that car accident having the capacity to do that. And a sense of immortality of one's consciousness. And then the unsuccessful navigation of the 8th house would look like blocked sexual functioning or obsessive sexuality, which I know can be a byproduct of sexual abuse. And then things like inordinate fear of death. So the denial of death or rigid denial of religious, occult, or mystical experiences and feelings. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up here in a bit and do a summary of your skip steps, with your nodal access and some remedies that I would recommend. But before I do that, I want to talk about one last thing. So I want to talk about your stellium in Sagittarius. The stellium holds a lot of potential power for you. And if you're not familiar with what a stellium is, it's, different astrologers use different amounts of planets, but, 3 or more planets that are close together is that stellium. And in your stellium, let's see, you have Lilith, Neptune, Mercury, and the moon. And Lilith is the leader of your stellium. So it's said that when we, because these planets are conjunct, again, it's kind of like that Mars-Uranus trauma bond, but instead of this being a trauma bond, it's something positive. So this can be a really big strength and asset for you. When one of these parts of your being, represented by these different planets, is activated, all the other 3 are going to be activated. So these are working as a team in your benefit. And when we tap into the energy, the conscious, healthy energy of the planet leading our stellium, which for you is Lilith, then we can harness the power of the stellium. So Lilith is the wild feminine. That's what it represents to me. It's basically, if we talk about it in terms of human design, this is your sacral response itself. So by tapping into your body and what your body wants and what your body is telling you to do and to go for, and to act upon, that's going to be super powerful for you. And doing so, because all these planets are in Sagittarius, is going to allow you to meet your need to find the meaning of life and your personal truth, because that's what the need of Sagittarius is. So making decisions following your Lilith, or your strategy and authority, your inner authority, that sacral authority, allows your unconscious and conscious minds, represented by the moon and Mercury, which are in the stellium, your body and your intellect, and then as well as your pure witness consciousness, which is the Neptune piece, so your spirit, all these 3 parts of you, your conscious mind, your intellect, your Mercury, your unconscious mind, your moon, your body, and your pure witness consciousness, or your spirit, or Neptune. When you tap into that authority, that wild feminine, that Lilith, and you let her lead, then you're going to begin to see truth as it actually exists. and when I say truth, I'm talking about your own subjective internal truth as well as what you might call God's truth. So the external objective truth of reality. And those two things can be in opposition, again, which you're gonna have wisdom about with that open head and ajna, and that, that tapping into of that healthy Libra energy. You're gonna have that capacity. And then doing that should result in a sense, this deep sense of trust in life, which will allow you to be all those wonderful Sagittarius things. So adventurous, having high spirits. And then because the stellium is in your 6th house, that would manifest through your daily life and the work that you choose to engage in. Okay, so now I want to move into the review, the recap. And I haven't taken notes on this part yet, so if things seem a little scrambled or gappy, that's the reason. So I might need a minute here to calibrate my mind to all the things that I just talked about and how I want to try to explain this in a way that flows and is efficient. Okay, so as a recap, I would say that, we can see that you have these triggers and the sensitivity around that assertiveness wounding, and we know what the cause of that is. It's because others were assertive and aggressive with you in abusive ways that were traumatizing. So that caused you to be sensitive to that energy. So to work on healing that assertiveness sensitivity, we need to look at, going from the unconscious to the conscious expression of that North Node Capricorn 8th house energy. So that could look like going from somebody who tries to control their own and others' assertiveness, out of fear to try to keep yourself safe, in those areas of the 8th house that I talked about, with the eighth house and the conscious and unconscious expression of that, going from somebody who tries to control those areas of life, things like death, spiritual experiences, sexual experiences, to somebody who begins to work with control in healthy ways. So again, we're taking our focus off of the things that we can't control and placing it on the things we can control. So how we're going to spend our time, who we're going to have in our life, what kind of work we want to engage in, whatever is going to be of benefit to you in your life is what, that you do have control over that. But I think the key, this is going to be a behavioral reworking. So I think the key to getting to that place where the focus on control has shifted from the things I can't control to the things I can is going to happen through the reworking of that South Node and Cancer energy. So, when we experience bad things, when we experience abuse at the hands of another person, we're going to blame them, and they should be blamed. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be blamed. But we can get stuck, we can get stuck in that blame. We can get stuck in just focusing on the power that other people have over us, the control that, the perceived control that other people have over us because of us living that reality as children. As children, other people do have power and control over us, but as adults, they really don't. And until we do the work to reparent and heal that inner child, we're going to still have those same perceptions and coping mechanisms in place that the child developed to keep itself safe. So with a Cancer South Node, I think in order for you to make this switch in, perceiving, in order for you to make the switch from control being about things you can't to the things you can control is going to require you to, come back into the body and then start paying attention to your feelings and needs, instead of, when you do feel bad, when you're feeling low, giving the control over how you feel to another person, because that's what happened to you as a kid. And now it's about, the other person's making me feel bad. And that may be true, but there's something that as an adult you can do about it now. So it's about learning how to begin to take responsibility for your own emotions. That's a big piece with a South Node in Cancer. Because when we realize that everything in our life, not just our emotions, are our responsibility, then we realize, okay, I can choose to keep feeling this way and thinking these things, or I can choose to do or think or feel something different. And then we realize, oh, I really do have control. I'm not a kid anymore. I'm an adult. I can love me unconditionally. I can meet my needs. I can do, whatever I need to do to take care of myself. With an open solar plexus. Yeah, it's open. Okay. With an open solar plexus, there's that history of conflict avoidance, right? And taking on other people's emotions and not realizing that they're not our own. And with Libra, you have those two affected parts of your being, your will with Mars and your true individuated self with Uranus in Libra. So that conflict avoidance and that deferring of to others and that trying not to rock the boat is keeping these two parts of you, it's keeping you from asserting your will. And also it's keeping you from, finally getting to know your true self and expressing that true self, due to the focus being about, oh, this other person is making me feel this way. And that's what we experience when we have an open solar plexus. Before we know about human design, we're just, we're taking in all these energies and we're thinking that they're our own, right? So we want to be, wise about and responsible for the emotions that, we're allowing into our bodies and into our auras and things. We always treat others and act in relationships the way that we treat ourselves and the way that we relate to ourselves. So when we learn how to take responsibility for our emotions and to understand what's ours and what's other people's, then we gain the capacity and we just naturally relate to other people that way. Now other people's emotions aren't our responsibility because ours are, right? And talking about this, I think that I forgot to read the need and the strategy for Cancer, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. South Node, your South Node being in Cancer, in this energy. So I want to read that. And the need of Cancer is to experience or know both yourself and others through feeling. And the strategy is measured, calculated vulnerability. So Cancer grows and evolves through vulnerability, both with itself and others. And vulnerability with self is achieved through the honest sharing of feelings, needs, and motivations with your conscious mind or ego personality in a delicate dance of showing and hiding. So I think that's why the crab is associated with Cancer in astrology. The crab comes out of its shell and then it goes back in. That delicate dance of showing and hiding. So Cancer craves intimacy, but it simultaneously fears it. And that fear of vulnerability or raw emotions and deep connection is what creates the crab's shell, or its shyness, reactivity, repression, manipulation, all those types of things. The crab being naturally soft, it needs its shell for protection. And the crab wants to come out of its shell, but will or should only do so with those whom it's vetted as being safe. The unconscious expression of this Cancer energy would be things like imbalanced or over or under caretaking of other people, expecting others to mother you. And again, this goes into taking responsibility for your own feelings. The shadow expression of Cancer a lot of times is, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. So, I'm responsible for your emotions. It's this whole codependency thing, right? I'm responsible for how you feel, and therefore now you're responsible for how I feel. But that's not healthy, and that's not the way that things actually work. That's what we learn when we grow up with, sick caregivers and parents. Okay, where was I? And then imbalanced vulnerability with others. So either over or under sharing. That can be another unconscious expression of Cancer energy. The conscious expression of this energy would be things like connecting to one's emotions, developing a loving relationship with yourself, caring for yourself, self-responsibility, vulnerability with safe people, keyword safe people, those people that you've vetted as being safe, because we don't want to, it's so coming from a trauma and abuse background. We want to make sure that we're not re-traumatizing ourselves by just opening up to people who aren't safe, right? And then nurturing ourselves and others through things like support, help, and protection, not from the aspect of a child where it's all about, I need you to love me, so I'm going to love you, and I'm going to do all these things for you that you could do for yourself, and I'm going to take on your emotions, and I'm going to, just all the things that kids do. It's coming more from that adult space where we've done the reparenting, and we've, when we have those inner child triggers and wounds come up, we can validate the child and we can say, yeah, I can understand, why you're feeling this way. And then in doing that, we form this loving relationship with ourselves, which is the conscious expression of Cancer. And in doing that, we just naturally, because we've learned how to nurture ourselves, right? Cancer is about the mother and nurturance. Now we can act as that for others in a healthy way. We can help and support others from a healthy adult space instead of a wounded child codependent space. So this whole cross that you have going on with the nodes, being squared by Chiron, and then opposite to that being squared by Mars and Uranus. This whole cross of healing, if you want to call it that, is like every piece is interconnected. Like once you do the reparenting work and you sit with your emotions, you start coming back into your body. And again, this is probably something you've already started doing, but once you do that, learning that self-responsibility, and I'm responsible for my emotions, and what are my emotions, and what are emotions in general, right? Because with an open solar plexus, a lot of times we're like totally clueless. And I say we're because I have an open solar plexus too. We're like, what are these emotions? What are they for? So, emotions are here to inform us. They're messengers about what's correct for us and what's not correct. And that's all they are. There's nothing to be ashamed of them about, or, they don't need to be controlled or repressed or any of that. They just need to be able to do their job to inform us. And then if we allow them free reign of our body like they're supposed to have, and we let them inform us, then now we're not so concerned with, everybody else's feelings. And now we're more concerned about, okay, I know what my emotions are trying to tell me. What am I going to do about it? And that's a really strong medicine for an afflicted Mars and a Chiron and Aries, where it's about that, that will, that action. We can't take productive, healthy, correct action on our lives if we don't have anything to inform us about, how to do that. And that's what our emotions are for. They're that's one tool that we have to help us to do that. So doing that reparenting needs feelings work on the Cancer South Node is then going to translate into, okay, well, this is healing my Mars, right? What proactive struggles am I going to engage in? Because life is a struggle, just living is a struggle. What battles am I going to engage in to better myself and to improve my lot in life? And that's going to take you into that Capricorn North Node, where now it's not about control like it used to be, controlling your emotions maybe with a South Node in Cancer, or trying to control your own assertiveness or the assertiveness of other people, because their emotions and how they're expressing them to you is not, it's not really any of your business. Learning self-responsibility around emotions with a Cancer South Node, now there's going to be power there for your will to act in ways that are going to serve you, that are going to prompt you to focus on control that's positive, that's self-serving. What do I have control over? It's not, I don't have control over other people's emotions. I don't really have control over my own emotions. I can choose to try to control them, but that just usually ends up, resulting in bad things I don't want. So, things like inability to have a strong will and to act on my desires, wants, and needs, as an example, with this Mars square the nodes. So, then with that healthy, healing Mars, now I know what I want to take action on, and I know what I control, what I can control, and what I can't. And I'm going to put my focus and my willpower on what I can control, which is the healthy North Node in Capricorn. And then in turn, once that whole piece is in place, I would assume that would translate into this, natural healing and healthy assertiveness, because when you place your focus on the things that you can control, you gain a lot of power. You take your power back from everybody and everything outside of yourself, the things you don't have control over. And now you can be assertive, and it's okay to be assertive. Now assertiveness is transformed into something that, as a child you experienced as being really abusive, and it was something that was that at that time in your life, but it doesn't have to be that anymore. Through reclaiming your power, you can reclaim and honor your natural access to that Aries energy, that struggle, that fight, that assertiveness of what you need to do for you to make sure that you're okay. The time of worrying about if everybody else is okay with that Libra, that Uranus and Mars in Libra, that time's over. It's time for you to care about you, and time, it's time in your life it's just time for you. That's just time for you. And with Chiron in the 11th house, I would say it's time for you to find your tribe if you haven't done that already. Find those people who are going to, who have similar values and interests, and who are going to be able to support you in achieving your goals and living the best life that you can have and that you deserve. And as you do all these things, you're going to heal that Uranus too. Now, who you are, you're going to be developing that. You might have to go back and have some experiences that you missed out on when you were a kid because of the trauma that you experienced, but that's okay. Have those experiences, have fun in that 5th house. In summary, I'm including 4 healing remedies. The first one is for your affected will and authentic self, your Mars and Uranus. The second one is for your Cancer South Node, the third for your Capricorn North Node, and the fourth for your Chiron sensitivity. To close this reading, I just wanted to say congratulations on all your hard work. I'm assuming this looks like to me what is lifetimes worth of, unhealed trauma that you're dealing with. So, that's a huge endeavor, and congratulations on, beginning the process to work on that in this lifetime. It's no easy feat, believe me, I know from personal experience. It was an honor reading for you, and thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to do so. You take good care of yourself, Angela.